Hey heroes, Josh here from Panels to Plastic. San Diego Comic-Con has just wrapped up, and one of my favourite things to do is to let all of the other toy YouTubers and content creators go out to San Diego Comic-Con, take all the photos, take all the videos, and I just sit from the comfort of my home and enjoy it all. And, you know, honestly, I save the photos that interest me and I peruse them at my leisure. Basically, what I'm going to do in this video, I would be doing anyway with or without the camera, so I thought I might as well stick the camera on and chat to you about it. I made one of these videos earlier in the year for Toy Fair, and, you know, a few people seem to enjoy it. And honestly, I think that my wife has grown tired of listening to me talk about toys. So I might as well do it to you guys instead. So, you know, I have a particular set of tastes, I suppose, and I've just picked out the stuff that speaks to me, the stuff that gets my juices flowing. So, you know, there will be stuff, big reveals that aren't necessarily in this video, but it's just the stuff that I'm thinking of picking up, or at least enjoying vicariously by looking at the photos. Overall, I'd say this has been a pretty good Comic-Con as far as toys go. There were a few big reveals that certainly I know for some people they are holy grail items, you know, complete wish list items. I didn't necessarily feel that way, but I think that reflects more my kind of growing disdain with modern toy collecting and the fact that, you know, almost everything that I want seemingly has already been made, and the few things that have yet to be made seemingly are never going to be made because of licensing and things like that. Anyway, starting on a bit of a down note there, but let's get into it. I'm going to start off in the order of how I really saw these things, which is at NECA. Now, the big news to come out of NECA is the end of the Turtles line, and I'm sorry to say that, you know, I'm not a big Turtles collector, so that doesn't really affect me. And if anything, it's kind of good news for me because now that the Turtles master license has been snatched away by Mattel, and they seem to be shuttering all of the extended license holders for Turtles, it means that companies like NECA can get back to what I believe they do best, which is horror and, you know, kind of movie stuff, and they can perhaps throw more of their weight behind that. Not that they weren't doing great work with that, but I certainly think that the cartoon line of the Turtles has kind of defined NECA over the last 10 years, and it would be nice. It's going to be nice to see what they throw their might behind next. For me, the thing that I am kind of most interested in from NECA has always been the Aliens and Predator stuff, and there was a smattering of Alien stuff on display. So these are the three new Xenomorphs being shown off at San Diego Comic-Con. We had the 40th anniversary Warrior Xeno from Aliens, which we've seen before, and I kind of don't understand this one because I've been holding out on buying the Ultimate Aliens Warrior Xeno that they did a few years ago, just because they're getting a bit harder to find now. And I was hoping with the 40th anniversary coming up, they would do like a new, refreshed Ultimate version, which I guess this is what this is, but it's in just like an all black finish, which doesn't really represent either the screen used costume, which was brown, or the way that it looked on screen, which was blue. So I don't, you know, fully get the point of this one. However, we also got two brand new reveals from Alien Earth. And, you know, I talked about Alien Earth on the main channel on my 2025 wrap-up. I enjoyed it for what it was worth. And, you know, the costume design of the Xenomorphs themselves, clearly on a TV budget, clearly men in rubber suits, but I didn't mind that about it. In fact, I find it preferable to some of the CGI Xenomorphs that we've had in recent years. These two Alien Earth figures from NECA represent the kind of the standard Xenomorph from the show, and also the Wendy's Xenomorph, which is the one that is kind of grown in captivity, and then Wendy busts him out at the end of the show. Spoilers for Alien Earth. And honestly, no matter what you think about the Xeno design in Alien Earth, you can't fault these figures. They look exactly as they do in the show. In fact, you know, it is a loving tribute to what is a very controversial design, you know, with the big rubber lips and the dentures and the slightly odd proportions. And, you know, these look great. I think that there is so much paint on these that you really just don't see for, you know, what's the NECA price point? It's like around $50, I think, now for a NECA figure. And, you know, compare that to what you get for $50 from Hasbro or McFarlane. And NECA are the only kind of like, you know, kind of standard retailer toy company that you are getting this much paint and this much sculpt and this much deco. And you know, they're doing it old school. This is kind of like, no one is doing this anymore, the way that like McFarlane was doing it back in the 2000s. So a few other things that stuck out to me from the NECA booth was the Muppet Christmas Carol figures. We'd seen these before. These were revealed a few months ago, but just getting to see them. I'm kind of a casual Muppets fan. I enjoyed them growing up, and now I'll occasionally put like an old episode of The Muppet Show on Disney Plus to enjoy, if it's like the Mark Hamill episode or the Christopher Reeve episode, for example. But really, for me, it was the Muppet Christmas Carol growing up. And even though I've been able to resist the temptation of getting any of the other NECA Muppets figures, well, none of them are out yet, but I wasn't going to go down that rabbit hole basically until they revealed the Christmas Carol figures. And, you know, I may definitely be in for a Kermit and a Tiny Tim, maybe like a Marley and Marley and a Gonzo and a Rizzo. Everyone seems to want a Michael Caine, but if you think about the way that these figures are scaled, that a Michael Caine figure in this line would have to be like, I don't know, like a 1/6 scale figure, I think. But yeah, these look fantastic. And then if you've been keeping up with the few videos that I make on this channel, you'll know that I hoped for NECA to pick up the Kiss license in my Dream Toys of 2025 video. And then at Toy Fair, when they had the Kiss Ben Cooper figures, I predicted that they were going to do ultimate figures of Kiss, because it's been a gap in the market since McFarlane did it. There have been other Kiss toys, but they're either kind of like Mego style, or they're just kind of like cheaper retro 5POA figures and stuff like that. But not since McFarlane has someone done, you know, really good, nicely sculpted kind of collector's grade Kiss action figures. And that is a huge gap in the market for me. So I was semi-delighted to see this box set from NECA, which features Kiss as they appear on the album cover of Dress to Kill. And I say semi-delighted because, you know, yes, these are articulated Kiss action figures, but these aren't really the looks that I would want for them. And also, some of the likenesses don't seem that great to me. Like they're going for a semi-cartoony look on some of these, or I don't know. The McFarlane likenesses were better, I have to say. So I am hovering over the buy it now of a few eBay auctions on the McFarlane Kiss figures, because I think eventually I'm just going to have to break down and buy those figures because I just love them so much. But I will hold out hope that this is a sign of things to come from NECA with Kiss, and we might get kind of the stage costumes, Destroyer era, kind of, you know, Kiss as I see them in my mind's eye. Moving on from NECA into some other kind of horror-related stuff. This was a company I'd never heard of before called Takatoku Toys, and I just wanted to highlight these Shogun horror figures, which is kind of, you know, your horror icons as typically made by the likes of NECA, but in this Shogun style. And I just think it's it's an interesting concept. Cool designs. You've got Leatherface, you've got Ghostface. I think there were some others as well, but I didn't say them. I think there was a Jason as well, but I didn't save a photo of that. I don't know if I'd pick these up, kind of price depending, but I think they're very cool to look at. Speaking of things that are cool to look at, from 52 Toys, there were these Universal Monsters figures. Here we've got Dracula and Frankenstein's monster, and these are a collaboration with the designer James Groman, who I know from, he's done some Safubi stuff at Mondo. I think he's like a Madballs guy. He kind of specializes in that like kind of 80s gross out, very stylized looking thing. And I just think these look absolutely awesome. I mean, if you wanted to be a hardcore Universal Monsters collector, and I know there are many of them out there, you are just spoiled for choice. Whether you go for the NECA stuff, the Jada stuff was really nice. You've got 1/6 stuff, which is really nice. And now you have these, which are obviously much more stylized, kind of cartoony and fun. I just think these are really cool, and definitely, I've always been in a little bit of limbo with Universal Monsters, because I want like a full set of the monsters on my shelf, and I've kind of dabbled in the reaction figures and in Jada's stuff and in NECA stuff, but I've never kind of like settled on one line to kind of go all in on. Whether or not this will be this line from 52 Toys or not, I guess we'll see, but I really like the concept behind them. And kind of on a similar vein, there was this figure that stood out to me from the Operation Monster Force line from Big Bad Workshop. And this is kind of their take on the creature from the Black Lagoon. It's obviously very cool, lovely paintwork and deco on there. and just looks, again, kind of like a stylized version of that character. But it's also their own original thing. Actually, it kind of reminds me of the take on the creature from Monster Squad, which I forget, was that like Rick Baker or Stan Winston or somebody did these amazing costumes for Monster Squad, and their take on the creature especially was very, very cool. All of this stuff also kind of reminds me of the Playmates line. Was it called Monster Force or something? It was a toy line back in the 90s, and it was these very 90s, very stylized, kind of super heroic takes on the Universal monsters. And I've often thought, like, if someone did like a modern version of that toy line, that would be the Universal monster line that I would go in on. So, you know, maybe my prayers are being answered there. As for this being from Big Bad Workshop, I'm not really sure how accessible that'll be to me in the UK, because I presume that these are sold exclusively on Big Bad Toy Shop. Is that what it's called? Big Bad Toy Store, which you probably can order from in the UK, but I don't know what the shipping and taxes on that would work out as. Let's move over to McFarlane, and there's not much to talk about for me with McFarlane. I'm not interested in the DC line. I sold all of my McFarlane DC Multiverse stuff. Sold a lot of my modern Spawn. I've got a little smattering of vintage Spawn back there. However, there were a few things that gave me pause, and a few things that gave me both seller's remorse and also seller's satisfaction, because McFarlane are kind of doing some revamped, redecoed reissues of some Batman and Robin figures, including the Mr. Freeze, the Arnie Mr. Freeze, and the Uma Thurman Poison Ivy. Now, I had the entire line of the Schumacher-verse from McFarlane, all of the Batman and Robin figures, all of the Batman Forever figures. I ended up selling all of those figures because, particularly after the Batman Forever figures came out, and they were kind of disappointing, not great likenesses, and then the Batman Returns figures came out and they hiked the price up on those. And then one day I tried to repose them on my shelf, and just, you know, the McFarlane have got those ratcheted ankles that just never line up with, you know, the figure to be able to just stand up straight. And I was getting so frustrated, I just put them all on eBay. And I kind of figured maybe Mattel will get round to making these further down the line. And also, you know, I really love some of these designs, so maybe I should just save up and get the Hot Toys versions of them, particularly like the Arnie Mr. Freeze. And then what I actually ended up doing after selling them was just buying a load of the vintage Kenner stuff, because those are the figures that I had as a kid. And actually, when I think about what I want a display for that movie to look like, it involves the vintage stuff. Anyway, this is all backstory to me seeing these updated figures from McFarlane, and I briefly thought, oh man, the chrome on the Mr. Freeze does look nice. Should I have kept hold of the Batman and Robin figures and got this to replace the kind of flat finished Mr. Freeze, and it would have spruced up the whole display. But then after I got over that, I realized no, it was the correct choice to sell them. And I've subsequently sold all of my DC Multiverse stuff, all the comic-based stuff as well. Partly because, you know, to just put myself in a holding pattern to see what Mattel ends up doing, but also just because I enjoy collecting vintage Kenner Batman so much that I don't really need any of this stuff. And the same applies with a lot of McFarlane Spawn stuff. McFarlane isn't making the toys that I want to see from McFarlane at the moment. They're not making the kind of like highly sculpted, highly detailed toys that made McFarlane special to me. McFarlane today represents a kind of like compromise between NECA and a Hasbro Marvel Legend. And in that way, it kind of takes the worst points of both. And I kind of wish that they'd just commit one way or the other. For example, with their Image Founders line, I mean, I'm the Image Comics guy on YouTube. If anybody should be buying this line, it should be me. But $60 a piece for a figure with like minimal paint on it and minimal accessories, and, you know, it doesn't represent a good value proposition. And I kind of don't know what's happened to McFarlane Toys in the last few years. It just seems like as a company, they've veered so far from what made them, you know, trailblazers. That being said, I was able to resist the Image Founders Spawn because I have the Kickstarter Spawn back there. I was able to resist the Savage Dragon because I didn't think it looked very good, and I will be able to resist the Witchblade and the guy from Wildcats, who I forget, because I'm really not a fan of Wildcats, and I was never big into Witchblade. However, the Rob Liefeld Prophet figure, that is going to be a harder thing to ignore if I see that, just because Rob Liefeld, whatever you think about his artwork, may be the most toyetic comic book artist of all time in terms of his designs. Big pouches, big guns, straps, the anguish faces, all of the weaponry, knee guards, shin guards, elbow guards, bandages wrapped around, crazy hair, cybernetic head attachments and things like that. The guy, I've got all my Toy Biz X-Force figures behind me, and it is just quintessentially 90s. Loose Collector have been making figures based on Youngblood and some of Liefeld's other properties, but they're kind of priced a little bit out of my range. But this Prophet figure, I don't know. If I see it, it might be a pickup. Kind of spinning out of the McFarlane DC stuff, Inart is a company that I've been watching with great interest, because they made like a Christian Bale Batman, and they've done some the video game stuff. And none of it has really spoken to me. I'm not a big Dark Knight trilogy guy, but I recognize that the artistry of the figures is just on another level. Like the head sculpts and the facial deco is just like absolutely crazy. Which brings us back to San Diego and the reveal of some of these Alex Ross inspired figures, including Superman, and yeah, I mean, the kind of like level of realism here is actually more than in Alex Ross's art, which is crazy. Like, especially when you get right up close on the face, there is more fidelity to that face and the detail in the face than you get in the original artwork, which is, is kind of mind-boggling. There's also an unpainted Batman there on display. And, I have a love-hate relationship with Alex Ross and his status as one of the all-time great comic book artists. But I can't deny that his depictions of these characters are, about as iconic as it gets. So this is the first thing that Inart has done where I'm like, okay, this could be for me. And if not Alex Ross, then Frank Miller. Many companies have tackled Frank Miller's Dark Knight version of Batman, and I've picked a few up over the years. And to be honest, I don't think that many of them have ever got the kind of look of Miller's, very stylized, chunky face quite right. The Hot Toys one that came out last year, people seem to be loving it, but that just did not look like Frank Miller's artwork to me whatsoever. I actually think the McFarlane version did a really good job with the head sculpt. I thought that really captured Frank Miller's artwork. And I'm digging this one. I don't know if I would like it enough to pay the higher price point that this will no doubt command. However, I do like the mutant leader that they also showed off here with the the spiky nipples and everything, and the spike mohawk. That's very cool. And then the final thing that caught my eye from Inart was this Joker. I don't know if this is based on anything, but it's kind of a classic Joker, basically. And, you just see the texture there on the suit and everything, and all the details on the face. It's just very, very impressive stuff when you consider that these are, 6-inch, 1/12 scale figures. I don't know what the pricing on these will be, but I know that the Nolan Batman that they did was like really reasonable. I think like cheaper than a Mafex figure, and the head sculpt is looks better than the Hot Toys version, which is kind of amazing that they're able to do that at this scale. Okay, let's briefly go over to Mondo, a company that I'm a big fan of, kind of looking at the stuff that they make, although they don't really deal with a lot of properties that I'm that into. For example, they debuted the Ecto-1 from Real Ghostbusters at San Diego Comic-Con, and if you're a Real Ghostbusters fan, I'm sure that would just completely blow your lid off, but, I'm not. However, I do like to admire the 1/6 Marvel animated stuff that they make, and there has been a few times where I've been like, oh, should I dip my toe in this line? And I think none more so than this lizard figure, which I don't think this is the first time they've shown this off, but these are definitely some nice glossy images of it and all the different head sculpts that it comes with. Night of the Lizard was obviously the premiere episode of Spider-Man the Animated Series, and it's also one of my favorite episodes. I think they kind of hit it out of the park straight away. And I just love all of the designs from the 94 Spider-Man cartoon. But particularly, this lizard is very iconic looking. All of the head sculpts that it comes with are great. Obviously, you have Kurt Connor's the kind of mid-transformation. I think some of these head sculpts on the left reference the 67 cartoon, which, throwing that in as a bonus, that's fine. I remember when they did the Rogue figure for the X-Men cartoon, they also included an X-Men Evolution head, which, you know, as a little bonus, it's fine. I don't know why you would display like a Jim Lee Rogue with the X-Men Evolution head, but whatever, different strokes, I guess. I mean, look at that head sculpt there with all the drool and everything. You know, maximum shelf presence there, I would say. And also from Mondo, I think this is the first like good look at the Goliath from Gargoyles there with Bronx as well. So cool. I mean, that just looks like it's come directly from the show. Will I ever buy a 1/6 Goliath? Probably not. But, you know, as I said in previous videos, I really wish that NECA could take another crack at this in the kind of like 6-7 inch scale. But with this level of accuracy to the show and this kind of deco, yeah, I was kind of disappointed by the kind of gritty versions that NECA made. Let's jump over to Jada Toys, a company that, as I said, I had the Universal Monsters, which were kind of their first foray into action figures. And then I know that the Street Fighter figures kind of took it to a whole other level, not into Street Fighter, so I've not experienced any of those figures. And I'm kind of waiting to see what are they going to grab me with. And it could be this Astro Boy. It's not like I'm a huge Astro Boy fan, but I do think that the character is kind of iconic and obviously a seminal character in the world of kind of anime and manga. And this is just a really fun, cool looking figure. Something that Jada seems to do really well. And this is presumably like a painted prototype, so we'll see what the production figure looks like. But just the attention to detail around finishes. So obviously the kind of the matte finish over the figure, but then the really high gloss on the big boots. And then also from Jada, I think most people will be excited about this for their Marvel vs. Capcom displays. Marvel vs. Capcom, I played it growing up, but I'm not committed to it in any way. But I think I'm probably in the minority of people who might buy this because I love Strider, the game series. So this is Strider Hiryu from Strider 2. And yeah, it just looks like a cool kind of very stylized, got those real 90s proportions and aesthetic to it. I just think this is a cool figure. And then the final thing from Jada that piqued my interest is the reveal of some more of the Invincible figures. And again, you know, I keep saying that I'm a casual fan of these things. I'm a very casual fan of Invincible. I've seen the show, I've read the comics, and I would potentially buy a figure of a Mark Grayson in the standard yellow and blues, which got revealed this weekend. And also, you know, probably an Omni-Man to go with him. So it's cool to get a good look at these. I really want to get hands-on with a newer Jada figure. And occasionally I do look at those Street Fighter figures and think, you know, maybe I'll just pick one up just to see. You know, I hear so many people raving about the engineering of it and the kind of the hand feel of it all. And so maybe this, you know, kind of classic costume Invincible is what I will go for to kind of get a sense. I mean, you know, just on the surface of it, looking at it, it kind of fixes all of the complaints that I have about Marvel Legends, just in terms of like proportioning and engineering, and from what I hear, like the smoothness of the joints and all the things that, for me, really ruin a Marvel Legend in hand when you're kind of fighting against the type of plastic they use and fighting against the joints and just, you know, not very pleasant to handle and move around. Anyway, speaking of Hasbro, the weekend kind of kicked off with some controversy around this G.I. Joe classified X Tomb Raider crossover. And yeah, why was it controversial? Well, I think the pricing is the main thing. This has ended up going up for pre-order at around like £50 or $50, I think. That immediately was enough to kill it for me. Even though I'm a huge Tomb Raider fan, actually, I've been replaying the original trilogy recently, and just, you know, basking in the nostalgia of that. Every time a music cue kind of strikes up or like a certain enemy type comes around and the sound effects and it just absolutely bringing back amazing memories. Which is another thing that kind of kills this figure for me because I'm not really sure what this is based on. It seems like a kind of like a combination of the modern Lara Croft games, but obviously with the kind of classic outfit. And I'm sure she's appeared like this in some of the games. I haven't played a lot of the newer games. But it kind of like, I don't know, for me to commit to this, especially at this price point, it would have to kind of look like what I remember Lara Croft looking like. You know, at the very least, it would have to have the round sunglasses, which to not even have these, considering the amount of accessories they've thrown in here, to not even have those or an alternate head with those glasses on, seems like a big missed opportunity to me. I mean, I'm not a G.I. Joe classified series collector anyway. They almost got me recently with the Action Man reveal. But again, these kind of like special collaboration figures they're doing, they're just priced way too high, in my opinion. And the main thing with this Lara Croft is my issue with a lot of Hasbro stuff, which is that it's their interpretation of it. And if you're fully committed to this line, then maybe that's what you want, and you want it to kind of go with all of your other G.I. Joe figures aesthetically. But if you're someone like me who's on the outside of that ecosystem and you want a Lara Croft figure that looks like Lara Croft, I don't know why I would buy this that doesn't look like any version of Lara Croft that I've seen before. This is something we'll maybe get into in the Marvel Legends section, but that's like the number one thing that's killed my interest in Marvel Legends, is that they're constantly doing Hasbro's version of Captain America or Hasbro's version of, Spider-Man or whoever else. And I don't give a shit about Hasbro's version. I want to see the Marvel version. I said earlier that I'm not a huge real Ghostbusters fan, but I certainly appreciate the property, and especially the old Kenner stuff. And these little ectoplasms I think are really fun. This is very much my vibe and my aesthetic at the moment. So obviously I love the old Kenner Real Ghostbusters branding and everything, and the little pots of ectoplasm, and these come with like little almost monster in my pocket style minifigures. They come in a range of colours, including some glow-in-the-dark ones, and I just think these are super cute, kind of, almost blind box kind of items. And, again, if I was in a comic shop or, in a toy shop and I saw these as an impulse buy, these are coming home with me. Not much to talk about on the Star Wars side, because my Star Wars collecting nowadays is kind of very focused on the two movies that I love to collect stuff from, which is Return of the Jedi and Episode 1, because those were kind of the two films that meant the most to me growing up. So here we have one of the 1:1 scale prop replicas of the thermal detonator, and I've only thrown this here obviously because it was kind of made famous by Leia in her Bouche disguise in Jabba's palace in the Return of the Jedi, and I would potentially get this if it means that we are going to get a Bouche helmet in the Black Series at some point, because the Bouche design is, for whatever reason, it's just my favourite Star Wars design of all time. And I know that the Disney Store did a version of the Bouche helmet earlier this year, actually, but it sold out online immediately, and I think it was probably just priced a bit higher than a Hasbro version would be. So I would 100% buy a Black Series version of the Bouche helmet. There aren't many Star Wars helmets. Much as I love Star Wars, there aren't many Star Wars helmets that I would make the space for. But the Bouche helmet is definitely the top of that list. And then speaking of Episode 1, I've got a pretty complete collection of Episode 1 Black Series figures. It's kind of my favourite, kind of subline of the Black Series to collect, because the Jar Jar is just absolutely perfect. The most recent Darth Maul is really great. The Sebulba is amazing. The Watto I haven't picked up yet, but I've no doubt that that's going to be amazing. And now arguably one of the most iconic designs from the Phantom Menace is Queen Amidala in this particular outfit. For me, when I think about the iconography of the Phantom Menace, it's the bright yellow Naboo starfighter, it's Jar Jar, it's the pod racers, it's Darth Maul, and then it's Amidala in this particular makeup and the red robe and everything. So for the Black Series, this is also the debut of this new packaging. Not something that I particularly care about, but I do think it looks great. And I also like the idea of the cross-sell. But mainly for me, it's all about this figure, the likeness to Natalie Portman, and the soft goods of the robe and everything. I just think this looks really great. And I feel like I find a way of working this rant into every video I make on this channel. But I'll stand up for Black Series any day of the week, because they're making stuff from the Phantom Menace. They're making stuff from the older movies, and it actually looks like what it's supposed to look like. Whereas Marvel Legends, one of their first reveals of the weekend was this 2-pack of Vision and Scarlet Witch from The Crossing, which is a comic book storyline from the mid-90s. Should be for me. I love that they're making these. I actually love the big cape on Vision, even though people are complaining about it. That's the kind of stylization I would like to see more of in Marvel Legends. But again, this looks like Hasbro's version of these characters. It doesn't look like the artwork. It doesn't look like Mike Diodato's crazy artwork. The faces don't look as crazy. The proportions aren't crazy. So why do I want this? And I know that the answer is that they want some kind of uniformity across the line. But for me, someone who loves the kind of extreme art styles of the 90s, why would I want like a homogenized version of that looks like, as a lot of people say about Marvel Legends, someone in cosplay? So again, much like McFarlane's offerings, even though it would seem that I am the exact target market for something like this, it doesn't look like the artwork to me, so I'm not going to buy it. And I have similar reservations about the Maximum series Black Suit Spider-Man. I did buy the first Maximum series Spider-Man and I sold it. Even though I've been crying out for a Todd McFarlane style Spider-Man figure, I just didn't think that what they were offering for the price was, anywhere near justified. And this is just a repaint of that figure in the black. I like how they're marketing it here with the Secret Wars #8 pose. I don't know how many figures in recent years that Hasbro has tried to sell us as the Secret Wars, version of the black suit, and none of them look like Mike Zeck's artwork. So, this is where the frustration starts to creep in for me. It's like if you're gonna do it, if you're gonna do artist-inspired stuff, then commit to it and make that version. Here we see the same old Peter Parker head that they've been trotting out for a long time. Which just has that like Marvel Legends aesthetic. And if you're into that, I'm not going to knock it. And I know there's a lot of people that, scale is really important and that kind of uniformity between lines is really important to them. But for me, that would only appeal to me if I was like a fan of Hasbro products. But I'm not. I'm a fan of Marvel characters. So I want the figures to look like the things that I love and not what Hasbro has decided that they look like. Does any of this make sense? Which kind of brings us nicely to the made-to-order Gamerverse Sentinel. And I said earlier that, Marvel vs. Capcom is not like a huge deal for me. And so I haven't been picking up any of the Gamerverse Marvel Legends. To be quite frank, I haven't been picking up any Marvel Legends over the past 2 years, like very few. But I like this Marvel vs. Capcom Sentinel for the main reason of it looks exactly like it does in the game. It's very stylized. Is very atypical of a Marvel Legends figure, in my opinion, just in terms of like the stylization and the full commitment to making it look as it looks in the game, and just the kind of overall aesthetic of it. It doesn't look like your standard Marvel Legends figure to me, and I think it looks super cool. But the standout Marvel Legends reveal for me, maybe counter to a lot of the points I've been making, is this Earth X Captain America. And it's for the pure reason that I was going to make a video on this channel about how Marvel Legends could win me back as a customer, because in theory, I am a diehard Marvel fan and a toy collector. Marvel Legends should be aimed directly at me, and they've completely lost me as a customer. And there was a multitude of reasons for that, which perhaps I will save for that video if anybody wants to see it. Let me know in the comments below. But one of the things I was going to say in that video, one of the ways in which they could win me back, is simply to make Earth X versions of all the characters. I'm as fickle as that. Look, if they did a Spider-Man and an Earth X version of Venom and Daredevil and, the weird teenage Red Skull, I just think that all of that stuff would look so good on the shelf, even if they have to do the tired old Hasbro aesthetic to achieve that, which is kind of what they've done here with this Captain America. But I'm going to completely abandon all of my principles and buy it anyway. Okay, this is the final thing I'm going to say on this little Marvel Legends rant. It's unfortunate, I guess, with Marvel Legends that they've been going so long, Hasbro have been going for so long with it, and that they have to rely on the kind of the tooling and the aesthetic and the design principles that have been in place for the last, how long have they had it? Since like 2007 was when Hasbro got it. 2013 is when the line as we know it, I think, got kind of started kicking off. And if you were Hasbro, of course you were going to rely on that library of bodies and head sculpts, because you're not just going to scrap it, but that puts them at a serious disadvantage to someone like Mattel coming in with DC and based on everything we've seen from the Chronicles line and the DC Kids line, they're going to hit the ground running because they have a fresh start. And it is just unfortunate that Hasbro won't be able to do that fresh start because they just can't. It would be a bad business decision to just abandon everything that they've done up to this point and start again. I think a lot of fans and collectors wouldn't be happy if they did that anyway. But for me, who is just like sick of the way those figures look, I kind of wish that there would just be a restart or someone new would take a crack at it. Okay, and the final reveal, as we talk about Marvel Legends, this all came on the last day after the Hall H Marvel Studios panel. We got the reveal of, you know, everyone at once dumped all of the Doomsday products. You have your Hot Toys, your kind of higher end statues and stuff like that. And of course, your Marvel Legends, a few of which I have to say really appeal to me because I'm not an MCU collector. But this Ian McKellen Magneto looks pretty fantastic with the soft goods cape, you have to say. And then the James Marsden Cyclops. I mean, the guy just looks so good as Cyclops, and it's so great to have him back. So these figures, I think, you know, when all is said and done, these are good representations of the characters. It is slightly unfortunate from my point of view because, another thing that I've been wishing for from Hasbro is Marvel Legends of the 2000s X-Men to get the full team. We got the Wolverine and the Mystique a few years ago, and those are two of my favorite Marvel Legends figures. So I really wish that they could do the whole cast from that first film, or the first trilogy at least. And I do kind of feel, just like having the No Way Home version of Tobey, I think precludes us now from ever getting like a classic 2000s version of the Tobey Spider-Man. I think that getting these Doomsday versions of Cyclops and Magneto, and eventually we'll get Professor X, and we'll get the Kelsey Grammer Beast and the Alan Cummings Nightcrawler. I think that, although it's cool to see, I think that kind of stymies our chances of ever getting the classic versions, which that would be my preference. I don't have high hopes for Doomsday. So it's kind of a bummer as well to see these. But alternatively, if this is the only way of getting a James Marsden version of Cyclops, then I guess I will reluctantly take it. All right, I've ranted and raved for far too long there. Overall, as I say, it was a good showing. I know that some people will be super hyped about some of this stuff. You know, people will be loving the Doomsday figures. People will be loving the real Ghostbusters Ecto 1. You know, some people will be loving the G.I. Joe Tomb Raider. For me, just where I'm at as a collector, I think it's evident from some of the videos I've made on this channel that modern stuff is not where my focus is at the moment. But it's still exciting to see it all. It's exciting to be refreshing my Instagram feed every 5 minutes and seeing all the new stuff. And, you know, in that vein, shout out to people like Preternia on Instagram, and Toy Shiz, and Robo Don't Know, and Unparalleled Universe, and Toy Arc, which is the site from where most of the images you'll be seeing in this video have come from. So, you know, it is an exciting time. I very much look forward to the next one. I look forward to your New York Comic-Cons and your toy fairs and everything like that. And whenever I get the opportunity, I'll pull out the camera and make a video about it. So thanks for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel for very sporadic toy videos. Subscribe to the main channel, Panels to Pixels, for marginally less sporadic comic book videos. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.